So welcome to our panel on the Summer Russian Language Teachers Program in Almaty, Kazakhstan. We have an exciting group of people presenting on various topics relating to the program in Almaty. And we'll start with Mattie Brown, who is a second-year master's student in history at Texas A&M University, Central Texas, and plans to defend her thesis and graduate this summer. During her time at TAMUCT, she served as the History Department's graduate research assistant, and she's the 2025 recipient of the Outstanding Graduate Student in History Award. Congratulations. She received a double bachelor's degree in history and modern language, Russian, from Texas A&M University in 2023. At Texas A&M, Mattie served as both a teaching assistant and a guest lecturer for the Russian department during the 2022-2023 school year. And she's going to be talking about aspects of the homestay in the Summer Russian Language Teachers Program in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan, for putting this panel together and for the introduction. Great to see everyone this morning. So I wanted to speak about the homestay aspect of the program specifically because I know firsthand the kind of difference a homestay experience can make on an overall cultural and language learning experience. So during undergrad, I had the opportunity within the same semester program to stay in a dormitory with the other Americans on my trip, and then later to switch to a stay with a host family. With these experiences in mind, I can comment on how I found the host family environment far more conducive to learning and practicing a language than staying in a dormitory or even on one's own. In a dorm, my classmates and I would more often than not rely on English to talk to one another, but with a host family, I had to rely solely on my language skills to communicate. I was very eager to learn that the SRLT program offered a homestay option in Almaty. A homestay experience in any country offers language students a glimpse into the intangible and cultural intricacies of daily life and conversation. Common to homestay experiences are interactions with children and extended relatives of all ages. Each provide an opportunity to learn and grow your language skills. Meal times, family outings, and even chores offer opportunities to engage with new vocabulary and conversation structures. Especially with families that speak little to no English, the student must rely on their knowledge of the language to communicate with their hosts. So, as for my experience in Almaty, I stayed with a mom and her 10-year-old daughter. The mom loved to cook, watch sports and reality TV, and the daughter spent most of her days playing outside with friends. They were both so, so sweet. Mealtime with my host was always a delightful foray into the local culture. I found her to be a wonderful cook, and she was always more than happy to explain the cultural significance and teach me the recipe of each Kazakh dish she would make. I learned to cook a few specific things that I brought home with me, such as plov and raspberry jam. She, at the very end of the program, sent some of the raspberry jam I helped make home with her, which I'm still working on. She sealed it very well, so it's still very tasty. I felt very fortunate to have a host that loved to just sit and visit. She and I would visit for hours after dinner, after as we drank tea. Often a little later in the evening, she would put on her favorite TV shows or a sports match, and we would visit about whatever program she had playing. My host would often have guests to visit, both family and friends, and I always enjoyed these visits as well because her visitors would allow me more conversational practice and insight into their experience living in Kazakhstan. Something interesting that I was able to note with my hosts was the ease with which they switched from Russian to Kazakh and back again in their conversations with one another, sometimes in the very same sentence, which I thought was always so interesting. My host's sister was a teacher of Kazakh, and she was more than happy to teach me a few words and phrases. Moreover, I enjoyed her insights onto the changing role of both Kazakh and Russian language in Kazakhstani society. One of the most rewarding aspects of the homestay is the two-way cultural exchange. Your hosts are often very curious about how you live your day-to-day life in your home city, and discussing differences between life in your host city and life at home provide an opportunity for learning and for bonding. So, one of the first things my host asked me when she first met me is, "You're from Texas, right?" And I said, yes, yes, I am. And she goes, we have a Texas here in Kazakhstan. It's Shymkent. That's where I'm from. I said, oh, that's so interesting. Apparently, it's very hot. They have lots of oil, and people drive very fast, which I can confirm are very true stereotypes of Texas. It was interesting to hear her preconceived notions about people from Texas, as she had never hosted someone from the southern region of America before. And moreover, on that, there were some aspects of my own life as a Southerner in America that surprised her. For example, I don't know if y'all were ever taught by your mom and especially your grandma, but if you wear a, button-down shirt or a blouse, you never, ever, ever leave the house with it unironed. So it came time for me to do laundry about the end of the first week. And I said, oh, do you have an iron that I can use? An iron and an ironing board? And she turned around very dramatically. She was a very dramatic person, and I loved her. And she said, you want to use the iron? And I said, yes, please. Do you have one? And she goes, in all of my years hosting Americans, I have never, ever had one of them ask to use the iron. That's so crazy. Anyways. Oh, someone commented that they would never iron. Well, I just imagine the my grandma is very alive and well, but I just imagine her spirit coming at me like, must always iron. So I physically could not leave my shirts unironed. So for the 2024 SRLT group, all of us elected to stay with a host family, and many of my colleagues and I would often come to class each day with stories and experiences we had the past evening or over the weekend, which had given us insight into life in Almaty and allowed us an opportunity to practice and learn. Many of my colleagues mentioned how their own mealtime and tea time conversations with their host allowed them both essential practice and insights into the complexities and nuance of family life in Kazakhstan. Several of us were invited on outings around the town and even out in the mountains with our hosts, who were always more than happy to give us the biggest taste of life in Almaty we can get in just 1 month. Two of our panelists here stayed with families that were relatives of one another, and each of them would come to class every week with tales of the frequent family get-togethers. They would discuss the dastakhan spreads and the interesting conversations they had with extended family members and friends, and the myriad celebrations each evening merited. Likewise, several of our colleagues experienced how people in Almaty like to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and weddings. Speaking of which, another of our colleagues was fortunate to be invited to a wedding. And one of our presentation weeks, they gave a very detailed presentation on the intricacies of Kazakh wedding culture that they were able to learn from their host. Not only did they have a front row seat to a unique cultural experience, but their hosts were quite inclusive and happy to have them participate in certain elements of the celebration. Their experience also prompted them to research Kazakh wedding traditions on their own, which is another example of how the homestay enhanced the learning experience and trip as a whole. I would say each of us came away with a favorite memory we had of our host families. Mine was definitely from the last weekend when my host and she had one of her friends in town. They invited me out to go karaokeing with them. And both of them were lovely singers, and they would sing in both Russian and Kazakh, which I found fascinating. And they knew a few of the songs that I was able to sing in mostly English. Um, I found this one to be the most delightful exchange of our respective cultures through music, the universal language, as some might say. To conclude, as is the case with most aspects of a study abroad program, you get from the homestay what you put into it. Choosing to spend time with your hosts and take advantage of living with one or many native speakers of your learned language adds so much meaning to your studies abroad. As holistically rewarding as the SRLT program was as a whole for my growth in learning in Russian, I found the homestay to be a crucial part of my experience. Это все. Спасибо.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we all have absolutely wonderful memories of our time in the homestays, which are a highlight among many highlights of the program. I'm going to talk a little bit about advisement and how this has given me greater credibility and more knowledge to enable me to advise students in various ways. One of them has to do with expectations of students. I talked to my individual instructor. In this program, we have individual instruction for a couple of hours a day, actually. It's quite remarkable. And we talked a lot about what we especially enjoy with our students, and also the challenges and how we are trying to figure them out. And also about the core background knowledge that students are expected to know, what's important locally. For example, local views of history. I found that the Dom Musée Kunaevo was especially important, which gave me important insights on what to avoid. Conversations having to do with perestroika and Gorbachev would go in a very different direction than in places in the United States that I'm used to interacting with. Common problems that instructors perceive, changes in recent years, things like short attention spans affects the types of text students can work with, written and video. So how to help students prepare for that, something I'm still working on. A need to build capacity to independently problem solve. That was something that I hadn't realized, which indicates that I need to work with students at all levels on situacji/nie. Not only that advanced function, getting students to the advanced level, but at all levels, just helping students understand problem solving skills so that they don't give up if they don't understand something right away. Things like behavioral guidelines, helping students prepare throughout the year that I have with them. Usually I have them for a year before they go overseas. I knew some of this before, but based on lived experience. Don't wear shorts, for example, to the campus was something that I saw and experienced and was told. Homestay host likes and dislikes. One of the wonderful things about the program is that we do have homestay hosts who take their role of acculturating us very seriously, and also in somewhat humorous ways too. For example, I learned from my host early on that she loves it when the previous people who stayed with her bought flowers. So just buy flowers every now and then. They'll tell you things that they like about the past people, things that they didn't like. For example, don't expect her to buy avocados from me all the time. She had someone who expected that. So don't think I would have done that anyway, but just in terms of expectations of the host, the homestay hosts are forthcoming in all kinds of ways. They're really wonderful. Food preferences, how not to overeat, how to decline unwanted quantities and types. I worked on that before, but I had a more personal experience. Simple things like saying "rahmet" instead of "spasiba" so that you don't completely stand out. So different behavioral guidelines I could see and experience myself to supplement things like the flagship cultural initiative materials that help students acculturate. Enhancing in terms of enhancing the student's individual experience and also marketing Kazakhstan as a study abroad destination, firsthand experience on how to individuate my marketing to students about things like hiking, film, dance, helping specific groups of students to navigate, for example, safety issues for students of color. I had a student who was concurrently in Kazakhstan at the time and actually said that it was a phenomenal place for her. But also brought up some issues that I could discuss firsthand right away with both my homestay host and my individual instructor to help me figure out how to advise in that way. Questions regarding disclosure for LGBTQ. I'd heard things from students, but hearing directly from my homestay host, her perceptions were very, very helpful. Students of Russian heritage, how various people, как они относятся к русскому языку, students of Russian heritage, how people feel about speaking Russian, various speakers of Russian, having conversations. Of course, these are just individual views, but some incidents, say with a taxi driver, for example, I could ask, what does that mean? Could you unpack that for me so I'm understanding your perspective and not mine? And help students of heritage understand things that they might need to be able to navigate. Helping students prepare even for things like board applications and advisement, the space program, the films and discussions of it, the film that I went to and a discussion of it, Soviet cuisine and history. These are just a couple of examples that we had board applicants successfully. We just found out yesterday applying for this year, and I could give them some a little bit of an insider's view of how they might approach that and how what they might expect when they get to Kazakhstan. Overall, I think the sense of credibility is much greater. I think it's obvious when I talk about Kazakhstan, it was a very deep experience for me. It's an experience that I loved. The personalized experiences and the affiliation to the region. I somewhat of a coincidence, but I just had a student who's taking a quarter off because of our quarter system didn't allow an internship. And he had some free time. And after hearing what I said in class about Kazakhstan, he said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Kazakhstan for 2 weeks." And so he went to Kazakhstan. He rented a car. I was stunned. And was able to navigate. I could give him some tips on not renting a car, but on navigating from firsthand experience. And so I think that the advisement experience, the credibility, the enthusiasm, the knowledge, and also the capacity to interpret sources. I listen to Kazakhstan YouTube all the time now, and that also enables me to develop some niche knowledge that I can use with individual students. So a fabulous experience to those of you in the audience who are going your счастливый пути and have a wonderful time. So our next speaker, let me move up, is Tony Lin, who is assistant professor of the practice and the Russian Slavic coordinator at Boston College, where he teaches Polish and Russian languages and literatures. He has won numerous grants, Fulbright Hayes, DRA, FRA, IIE, Fulbright Research Scholarship. Oh, this is a long list. Many different scholarships, Critical Language Scholarship, Department of State, fabulous, congratulations, to research and study in Russia, Poland, Germany, and France. He's published many articles on Polish and Russian music and literature. He's also an accomplished pianist, having graduated from Northwest University School of Music with a degree in piano performance and given numerous recitals in the United States and Europe. And he's going to talk about the extracurricular aspects of the program, navigating the cultural scene in Almaty, and the learning that took place outside of the classroom.
Thank you very much, Susan. Can everybody hear me? Okay, perfect. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if it works. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties, so you might have seen me in and out of the room. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. So, as Susan said, I'm going to be talking about the learning that takes place outside of the classroom, and let me try to make this full screen. So, there we go. So, I did the Almaty program in 2023. And prior to that, I had done the program in Moscow when it was at MGU in 2011. And this is something that we got in the beginning of the program. So you can see that there's a very rich cultural component that includes various excursions, safaris, and so on. And I do not mean it as a criticism, but as somebody who loves to travel, I was somewhat underwhelmed in the sense that, we had 4 weekends there, and not every single day was fully planned. So it's up to each participant to sort of fill in the blank, whether it's after class or on the weekend, because we had several weekend days free. So I'm going to share some ideas, what one might consider doing in the short period that one is abroad. And I think of this experience as basically studying abroad. So I try to think about what I tell my students when I'm trying to prepare them for the best, most fulfilling study abroad experience. And a few things came to mind. And that is first to really take advantage of the fact that while you're abroad, to do things that are not always in your comfort zone, to try things that are out of the ordinary. And I have a few examples I'll elaborate upon later. some people might find study abroad, maybe they might be homesick, but I personally find it to be somewhat liberating to be away from these teaching obligations and so on. So I'll be talking about that. And you're allowed to travel, of course, locally as well. But I was able to, because I know ACTR has this policy, you have to get the resident director in Washington to give you permission. So I did a weekend travel to Astana. And I know that I wasn't the only person who did that. There were other colleagues who traveled to a different city, again, with the ACTR's explicit permission. And then finally, since this roundtable is centered on international connections, meet and talk to people, which seems kind of obvious and sort of inherent to the program because we have the host family, but still I can share some thoughts on that. So I have a few images here I hope everybody can see. So these are just some list of ideas. So I had not been to, well, I've been to Banya, but to the extent that I did in Astana, they have a fantastic banya. I'm forgetting the name right now, but I've been there several times, and it's thanks to my colleagues who were all engaged in various things. And my colleague Jill Neuendorf went to this banya and then highly recommended it. So I went myself, and then later brought a few colleagues there as well. They have various procedures you can do, facial massage, and so on. So I would totally check it out. It was a very relaxing experience. And you might have to check the calendar of the given city. So when I was in Moscow, there were numerous concerts, theater events, and in July in Almaty, unfortunately, there weren't too many because it was the off season, but there were these circus shows that I managed to attend, and it happened that my host family lived very close to the circus, so that was an easy thing to do, and really enjoyed it. It was very high level. And of course, you can visit Green Bazaar. And I remember Shannon, who is here, went to Baraholka, and that was such an experience as well. It's a little bit out of the city, but you can take these buses, marshrutka, and then try to buy, well, I didn't buy any rug, but you can buy musical instruments, souvenirs, and so on. It's a pretty big, overwhelming experience, but just to see what that part of the life is like in Almaty. And the program takes us to various museums, but there were museums that we did not go to. So in the free time, I would go to various museums. So art museum too, of course, but also leader of the Soviet Kazakhstan as well. I also went to the zoo by myself. And finally, this is something that might seem, again, very simple, but you can watch movies, and there are several reasons for that. First, you can see movies that are otherwise probably not easy to come by. Some Kazakh movies, I did see some. And another reason is that it can get very hot in Almaty. And movie theaters have air conditioning, and it's also very reasonably priced. And one of them is very close to the university. So I did that on many occasions. And the food scene is excellent. And I think Susan was talking about the credibility. So when students ask me about whether safety or what they can expect, I'm always excited to talk about the various foods that are available. So from Georgian, from Central Asian, from Chinese, Korean. So the images that you see are ding ding chao fan to the upper right, and then gan fan. So these are all Chinese inspired dishes, and there are more that, turando. This boss hogo kazan. It's huoguo, so it's a hot pot. And there's an image to the right that you can see. They also have these noodle soups. So these are just a few images, but really the food scene is very diverse, really excellent quality, and of course, again, quite affordable. And being a Taiwanese American, of course, I have to point out that bubble tea is becoming a fashionable thing. It's really I mean, not exactly every corner, but very widespread and easy to find really good bubble tea. They had these varieties that you can see, Utopia, Uchabang, they even have the writing in Chinese. And there are, these potato chips that are familiar brand but unfamiliar flavor. So there's Beshbarmak flavors that you can try when you're there. And I also wanted to talk about traveling. So as I mentioned, I was able to travel to Astana. So you can see the picture um, on both ends. And then the one in the middle is, of course, me trying to look Kazakh. But um, during the program, not just myself, but several other participants were searching for opportunities to get to see part of Kazakhstan that the program did not plan. So there are plenty of these local travel agencies, and again, they are quite reasonably priced. And I did ask my host family because there are sites to see trout farm, or I end up seeing these two beautiful rivers, Kainde, Kaosai, and you can see that it's quite intense. You meet at 6 a.m. and then you don't come back until 10 or 11 at night. But beautiful scenery, but perhaps more important than that, you are in the bus full of local people, and then of course you make connections. And I'll mention that my colleague Braxton was playing all these games with the local people, and that was really a nice bonding experience. So I recommend checking this out while you are there. And my final slide is so that's where the handprint of former President Nazarbayev is. There are plenty of opportunities to talk to people. So first and foremost, with host family, we're still in touch via WhatsApp. We check in with each other every so often, and then sometimes you can talk to host families. This happened several times when the mother of the host family mother came over, and then we had very interesting conversations on a wide range of topics. And I think Susan mentioned the taxi driver as well. So I was using Yandex Taxi to get around because it's quite affordable. And yeah, more often than not, you strike up a conversation. I found the Kazakh people to be very friendly, very open to communication, and often very curious about people who have come to the country to study, to learn the language, or for other purposes. And something that I think I'll share that Shannon and I, we have a mutual friend that just happened to be teaching in Almaty, and it's more than just one person, but there are many actually Russians in Almaty for obvious reasons, but you can really, I think, meet people of various origins quite easily there. And there also, of course, you can use various apps, social media, if that's your thing, to meet and talk to people, not only to, as a linguistic practice, but also to see what they're interested in. For example, we were advised not to bring up the protests. So I didn't necessarily bring it up, but just things that you can talk about that are beyond what's covered in the classroom. So those are just a few things I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony. There's so many things to see and do when you're there. A month goes by very fast. So our next speaker is Shannon Quinn, Associate Professor of Russian and Technology Specialist at Michigan State University. Her PhD is from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in Slavic languages, and she has a master's degree in instructional design from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. You may know her from the Rails project, and she also has another fabulous project that I believe is going to be talking about today, grounded specifically in Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share some slides just because I have some good visuals. I went to Almaty in 2023 with both Tony and Lara, and it's really great to hear other people's experiences as well. I didn't think of a very clever title for my part, but plan a project to work on as a part of your trip. That's the main idea of what I'm going to say. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project that I worked on when I was in Almaty. And so for me, it was perfect timing because I was working with a colleague, Anna Tumarkin from the University of Wisconsin, and we had gotten a grant to create a textbook that was introducing students to places that have Russian-speaking communities. And so we already knew we wanted a chapter on Kazakhstan for many reasons. Of course, because Kazakhstan is just a fascinating place, but also because so many students are studying abroad there. And like Susan says, it's so wonderful to have kind of more authority to talk about the places. You know, I've gone through my whole career being used to that my students would be usually going to Moscow, St. Petersburg, or Volgograd, all places I had been. And so now when students have started to go to places that I have never been, I have this sort of feeling of discomfort. And so I don't know if in my life I'll have time to go to all the places that our students are studying abroad now. I hope I will, but it at least gave me a start to be able to go to Kazakhstan. So we knew we wanted to have a chapter on Kazakhstan, and we also had already decided that the lexical topic for that chapter would be music. And so I knew in advance what I would be working on, and that really, really helped me to be able to take good advantage of the different resources that the program gave me. And so, of course, we had some excursions that we went on with our group. This was to the museum, like the ethnographic museum. I forget the name of it. But of course, in our chapter on Kazakhstan, we do things to introduce the country. And so I was able to have that in mind as I was going around to these excursions and be able to take pictures and gather information that would help me to present the country to students. And so that's one example of that. And then this is a picture from when we went to the Aul, uh, where they kind of had a reconstructed Kazakh village, and they had us sit in the yurt and tell us different things about the yurt, and they also played music. So, of course, that was a great opportunity for me to gather some pictures, gather some information that I could include in the textbook. I also was able to tailor some of my free time to enhance my project on music. Lara and I together went to the Museum of Musical Instruments, and so I took a bunch of pictures of that. So some of those made it into the book. Also, my host family, it was I agree with all of the things that Mattie said about the advantages of living with the host family. And just one additional one is that I was sort of able to do a little bit of a survey of my host family about their opinions about music. There were two college age daughters in the family that I lived in. And of course, there's the same generation as our students that are kind of the audience for the textbook. And so I was able to pose some questions to them about the music topics, asking them, you know, who are the popular music artists among their friends. We talked about Skriptonit as one example. And so that was a really wonderful source of information. And of course, maybe the biggest help was my tutor because right at the very beginning, I was able to tell my tutor, I would really love to work on this topic. And then I'm not sure if the program is still structured the same way, but for us, we had one kind of final project that we gave a presentation on at the very end of the program. And so I knew right from the beginning what I wanted my final presentation to be on. And so I was able to work with my tutor on the text of that. And of course, my tutor also helped me to identify topics that I might not have come to as quickly on my own. So, for example, Doiski Piesni, and I'm really jealous of those people that you said got invited to weddings because I didn't have that opportunity this time, but I did get to learn about wedding music, and I don't know that I would have realized that that was such an important topic. But my tutor introduced me to the idea right away. I read a lot about it and then wrote about it for my final project. And then I have this as an example because after my tutor introduced me to the idea, as I was going around the city, I had my eye open and then I found something related to that when I was going around the city. And then, of course, as I said, my tutor helped me to write about the topic, and this made up my final presentation for the program, and then some parts of what I wrote for that presentation. And so this is our room. I don't think this is actually the day that we were presenting. I must not have taken pictures, but this is the room where we were presenting and some of the people from the program. And you probably recognize the room, the special room with the air conditioning. It was very hot during summer 2023. Um, this is my presentation. And so some parts of what I wrote for that presentation did end up in the book. And so that was so helpful because my tutor was able to help me shape those parts that did end up appearing. And I also have lace. When I laughed when I saw your picture, um, as I was going around the city, I was keeping my eye out for things that I could include, and I did end up, so I saw this advertisement for Lay's Beshbarmak around the city, and there were videos in the metro about Lay's Beshbarmak, and I, of course, noticed that in the advertisement, they included people playing traditional instruments, but also a popular rapper in the same advertisement. So it seemed like a perfect thing to include in the book. So that is also there. So it was just a really fun task to keep my eye out for what I might be able to include in the book. And then there were some happy accidents, which another thing that we did in order to keep cool was go to a bunch of the big malls that are pretty popular around the city. And I happened to see this advertisement or sign at one of the malls, and this ended up not actually in the chapter on Kazakhstan, but in the chapter that we did on Russian-speaking communities in the United States. We had a page about code switching, and so I included this as an example of code switching where I love how, like, if you look at this, there's Russian, Kazakh, and English all kind of in the same sentence. And so it was just really wonderful to be able to keep my eye out for those happy accidents. And I just wanted to express appreciation to ACTR for this wonderful opportunity. It's not always easy for us as teachers to be able to go on study abroad. And also, I thought about it that this time that I spent in Kazakhstan had been the first time in around 20 years that I had really spent just focusing on my own language. And so that was another wonderful opportunity, and I think it's so worthwhile. And so I really appreciate ACTR offering this opportunity to teachers. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that we all feel that gratitude. It's a life-changing experience. I also wanted to mention, I echo the mention of the Museum of Musical Instruments. It's a small, unimposing building, but it's an absolutely phenomenal museum, and you can listen to recordings of various types of music. It's really an incredible place. Highly recommended. Give yourself plenty of time. So our next speaker is Kit Pribble, who is an assistant professor of Russian at Wake Forest University. Her research includes second language acquisition with a focus on AI applications in the L2 classroom and Russian Romantic prose. Along with Molly Blazing, she's one of the co-founders of the Consortium for the Study of AI and Language in Slavic, CSAIL.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that introduction, and thank you so much for organizing this panel. It's been really lovely to relive some of the memories of the summer that I spent in Almaty and to hear about others' experiences. So thank you for putting this together. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides, and I should go ahead and note that the Lay's Beshbarmak flavored potato chips are also going to make an appearance in my presentation. So that is the unexpected through line, I think, of today's panel. All right. So hopefully you can see my slides. So today I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of the ways I have integrated cultural objects and knowledge that I brought back from Almaty into the Russian language classes that I've been teaching this academic year at Wake Forest. And I'm going to focus mostly on some of the relatively local and small-scale ways I've tried to integrate references to Kazakh culture, information about Kazakh history throughout the course of the semester into the different courses that I'm teaching. I think something that we're probably all here aware of, a kind of well acknowledged at this point problem in the teaching of Russian as a foreign language in the United States is that a lot of our core textbooks traditionally have offered a relatively homogenized view of the target culture. This is something that has been acknowledged for the past decade or more, and I've just included some representative articles addressing this topic. I do think this is definitely changing, so I was really encouraged by a share out session on open educational resources yesterday where we were told that the next edition of Между нами is going to include narratives in Riga and also in Almaty. So there's going to be some more representation of cultures outside of Russia in the next edition of Между нами. And then, of course, there are the fantastic open educational resources that have been put together by folks like Shannon Quinn. And I have used the diverse Russian multicultural exploration textbook as well as the Russian Advanced Interactive Listening series. I'll talk a little bit about those in a couple of minutes, but those have been absolutely fantastic resources. So it's good that our instructional materials are diversifying, but it's still the case that at least for now, a lot of the especially introductory and intermediate level textbooks, again, they focus mostly on Russian culture within Russia. And so I think it's really important to find opportunities to bring in references to and information about post-Soviet states, places outside of the Russian Federation. I want to note that, that said, I also, when in August, I was kind of thinking about ways that I could incorporate some of the materials I had brought back from Kazakhstan, some of the knowledge I was bringing back. When I was thinking about how to do this in my courses this year, I really took Thomas Garza's point in this really fantastic article in the Russian Language Journal that it's really important when we're diversifying our instructional materials that we try to avoid tokenization, right? Just occasionally throwing in Kazakh names, for example, or changing a few biographical details about characters in textbooks, stuff like that. And this point that the way that we're incorporating some of these materials should be deeper, should encourage students to engage in a more extended and critical look at for one thing, why it is that most of our instructional materials and textbooks up to this point have focused on the Russian Federation, the place that is occupied by Kazakh culture and Kazakh language in the post-Soviet space. And so, again, that's just something that I was trying to keep in mind as I was thinking about ways to bring the experience in Almaty into my Russian language classes this year. I think this is kind of a tricky problem, and it's something I'd be happy to chat more about if others have encountered this question. So kind of with that caveat in mind, a couple of the things that I have done. So in my first year Russian class, I used the Между нами textbook, which as of now, only has narratives and characters within the borders of the Russian Federation. So the way that I've always structured the composition assignments for my first year Russian classes with Между нами, and I've been doing it for so long, I don't remember if this is the case, but it may be the case that this is how the textbook authors actually encourage us to do it. But the compositions are always structured as letters to imagined pen pals. So over the course of the year, students gradually write a series of letters to imagined pen pals previously in Russia. And so they kind of, by the end of the year, they'll have this whole series of letters that they've written. And previously, for all the years that I was using Между нами, the imagined pen pals were Vanya and Marina, and they were in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and they had little biographies, and these were the pen pals the students would write to, right? So for this year, I switched the imagined fictional characters that the students are writing to. So now they write their letters to Amirkul and Aygerim, who both live in Almaty, and they also have little kind of imagined biographies. And over the course of the different composition assignments, we gradually introduce more information about these two characters so that the students can kind of respond to that information in these compositions, these letters that they're writing. And kind of one of the ways that I was trying to make sure that this wasn't just an exercise in tokenization, right? Not just, throwing some Kazakh names in there and having some biographical details. I've also used this as an opportunity to talk more with students about, or to kind of introduce some of the thornier issues in Kazakh culture and history. So we talk about the three-language policy. I will say that students often come in not knowing very much about Kazakhstan at all. They're really surprised to find out that Russian is spoken there in many cases, and then they're curious: is there also a Kazakh language, and what is the relationship between those languages? If we have Amirkul and Aygerim, who are both imagined college students in Almaty, are they more likely to speak? Do they speak Russian and Kazakh, or what is their linguistic makeup going to be? And so we kind of use this as an opportunity to talk about the history of language politics in Kazakhstan, and some of the moments in history over the past couple of hundred years of how that complicated history of language politics has evolved. And to do this, I bring in some of those images, like the ones that Shannon was sharing of signs, pictures that I took in Almaty of signs that would be in the three different languages, and then also this fantastic book that I purchased in a little bookstore, Almaty Kitab, that my host mom very graciously took me to, and it's a fantastic book that's in Kazakh, Russian, and English on Kazakh traditions and customs. It's a really beautiful book, so I bring it in and we look at it and look at some sections are in all three languages. There are a couple of things that are only in Kazakh, so we look at kind of, which kind of choices have been made about which things to keep only in Kazakh and which to translate into the other languages. Students look at the Kazakh alphabet, compare it to Cyrillic, and these are all things that can be done kind of in the very first semester, right? So another thing that I've done also in first year Russian, so second semester, once we get to chapter 6 of Между нами, I'm sure if any of the people in this room use Между нами, you're familiar with the kind of souvenir and gift buying vocabulary and grammar topic in chapter 6. So to go along with this unit, I have always had a little role play market set up where I would bring in all of these items that are included in the vocabulary section for that chapter. So цветы, платок, книга по искусству, кулинарная книга, that should be книга, not кухня, matryoshka, and so on, right? So these are all of the souvenir vocab terms that are introduced in chapter 6 of Между нами. And so I would bring in all of these items and we'd have a little role play market, and we would use rubles that were printed on pieces of paper, and then items would be priced according to contemporary Russian prices. So what I've done now is I have expanded the collection of items that I bring in to now include a number of items that I brought back from Almaty. It was my host mom's idea to say you're no longer going to have a rinak, it's going to be a bazaar, right? So it's now a little bit more of a kind of international bazaar and very small scale. But I brought back all of these items from Almaty, so a chubecheka, piala, the felt yurts, some jewelry, the souvenirная бейсболка, which again is a term that they use in Между нами. I used to have one that said Moscow. That's now been replaced with this, I think, much nicer looking one with the Kazakhsky ornamenty. And then we use fake tenge instead of rubles, and things are priced according to Kazakh prices. And then I also teach students just rakhmet, so that when they're doing their kind of role play in this little market and they're using the buying and selling vocabulary and talking about which things they want to purchase, they're saying spasiba and also rakhmet, right? So just an opportunity to kind of, again, diversify that material from Между нами a little bit. And then finally, I just want to mention that in my advanced Russian class, so the more kind of large-scale change that I made this semester to a class I was teaching kind of on the basis of the SRLT program was I knew that I was going to be teaching this class that we have that's Russian 335. In Russian, it's called Russian Culture and Civilization. So I changed it to Russophone culture and civilization, and we had a conversation with the students at the beginning of the semester about what it meant to change it from Russian to Russophone culture and civilization, why that's important. I will say there was a little bit of resistance from students some of whom came in expecting mostly to learn about Russia and Ukraine. Particularly those who had heritage there, and were not expecting necessarily to have multiple weeks of the semester dedicated to Central Asia. And I'm curious if this is also something that anyone has encountered. So I found myself needing to justify that a little bit, why we were talking so much about the Caucasus and Central Asia. But I will say that so we had a unit on svadebные традиции and one on народная музыка. And for the wedding traditions, the Russian Advanced Interactive Listening Series lessons based on the lecture by Dr. Besenova, absolutely fantastic. The students loved it. They found it really challenging, but it's a great resource. And then the lesson on Kazakh folk music that Shannon was mentioning. This went over super well. They loved it. I think a lot of the students fell in love with Dimash, really loved listening to his music. So these are really, really fantastic resources to kind of bring into a class that, again, traditionally has been on Russian culture and civilization. And I'm so glad that now we're having these open educational resources that are sort of expanding the possibilities for classes like that. So with that, I just want to say thank you, spasiba, rakhmet, and here's my Beshbarmak Lay's photo, and I just threw that in here because we also had a unit on kuchni gostoprimstva in different, Russophone cultures. And we talked about Beshbarmak and the fact that I was able to bring in this picture of the Lay's potato chips. They thought it was so funny. And so I'm really grateful to the SRLT program for giving me this opportunity to have these personal experiences, to collect these photos. And I think that really, like Susan was saying, it gives a lot of credibility with teaching these, with teaching these materials. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So many great ideas emerging in cross-fertilization across this panel. Now I'd like to introduce our last speaker, who is Lara Ravitch, who coordinates the Russian language program at the University of Oregon, where she also teaches first, second, and third year Russian. For the last 20 summers, she's also served as dean at Lesnaya Ozero, Concordia Language Village's summer Russian language immersion camp for children ages 7 to 18. In the summer of 2023, she had the opportunity to take a few weeks off from camp and participate in SRLT, which has enriched her teaching and program leadership in innumerable ways, which we'll discuss now.
Thank you so much. And everything that everyone has talked about has resonated with me in so many different ways. I do not have a picture of Lay's potato chips in my presentation, so I apologize for not carrying that through. So I'm going to talk very briefly about my context first, just because I think it will help to understand how I use some of the experiences from SRLT in my program. I'm going to talk, like Kit did, about how I was influenced and inspired by the wonderful experiences during SRLT to make changes and additions to my teaching at the language program that I direct. And so first, this picture here is from the Owl, the traditional yurt village that we visited. And that is going to be one of the activities that I'm going to talk about. The other activity that I'll be talking about is a trip to the art museum. And I wanted to focus on these two things because I think we've heard already that there are both wonderful excursions that are sponsored by the program and wonderful excursions that you can go on your own independently. And our excursion to Etno in the picture here was one that was sponsored by the program. And then the trip to the art museum was an independent trip that I took with colleagues. And so it sort of shows how you can use both of those things for furthering your teaching. So Nishnaway Otra is one of Concordia language villages. It's a network of 15 language camps located in northern Minnesota. And our mission is to inspire courageous global citizens. And Kit's presentation actually reminds me that it might help to give you the context that those larger picture discussions about Russia's role in the world and Russian speaking world and different cultures where Russian is spoken are things that we have always addressed because of our mission to inspire courageous global citizens. And what I was really looking for this summer was things that we could use more as part of daily life, our craft projects, our dance projects, the music that we infuse the village with, the nuances of different aspects of the language curriculum and the cultural components. Because one of our goals in the last few years has been to make sure that we have children coming to camp and they're having a wonderful time with Russian culture, and that's great. But we want to make sure that the fun and excitement that they get is not only about Russian culture, but that a lot of the fun is about how just fabulously delightful all of these different cultures are where Russian is spoken. So that was part of my goal to bring back. And the CLV way, the way that we run things, is about a simulated trip to a village in some sort of imaginary location where the language is spoken. And our French village and our Spanish village have really set a very nice example for us of having that not be about a village in France or a village in Spain, right? They represent through their architecture and through their culture the Francophone world, right? Or many different Spanish-speaking countries. And so although our permanent architecture is largely representative of Russia, a little over 10 years ago, we acquired a yurt. And so we've been trying to diversify even our physical locale with that. Unfortunately, it's a Mongolian yurt because it turns out it's rather difficult to source Kazakh or Kyrgyz yurts in the US. But we have decor items that are representative of different places where Russian is spoken. And one of my goals during our experience in Almaty was to bring things back to make the yurt a really great and fun and enjoyable and rich educational experience. Historically, we had lots of Russian cultural activities that were sort of embedded in our materials and very easy for anyone to come in to pick up and run with. But whether or not we had a Kazakh activity might depend on whether we happened to have a staff member who had been to Kazakhstan or was familiar with Kazakh culture. So I wanted to make that easier and more accessible for a wider range of staff. So it was funny looking at some of Shannon's pictures. I'm like, oh, I've got that one from a different angle. Here's on the left, we have that trip to Ethno Owl. On the right, a picture from the yurt in the History Museum. And so one of the things that I could see when I visited these yurts is I needed more things. Our yurt was bare. And so the baraholka that Tony mentioned was key to my goal for increasing the textile situation in our yurt. It was really an incredible place. If you're going on the program, I definitely recommend going there. There's everything you could possibly need. So I bought lots and lots of textiles for the yurt. Also just going to shopping malls. I found this great book, Historia Yurte, which has just wonderful illustrations of the yurt and its role in Russian culture, which if you're running an immersion camp for children who don't speak Russian, having a lot of really rich illustrations that tell a historical story is super important. So that was wonderful. And then one of my favorite finds was this like kids dastarkhan set that we now feature in our yurt so that we can have meals and exemplify Kazakh hospitality. And you can see what our yurt looks like now with some of the additions based on things that we bought in Almaty. One of my boxes sadly got lost in the mail, so it's not quite as rich as it would have been. And Shannon, you'll know how devastating that is. Turns out it's very difficult to mail giant boxes from Almaty to the US. Post office culture was an exciting experience as well. And you'll see the round table there was something that I had some of our facilities folks work on creating after having seen examples of those in the yurts that we visited in Atnaul. You can see the plastic dastarkhan set there as well. And then I was also able to develop some lessons that I taught myself last summer and are now available for my staff to use on Kazakhsky ornament. When we visited the yurts at Etnoul, we learned a bit about what the ornament they symbolize. And one of my colleagues did some research on that that I also got to then learn from. So this Historia Yurte book is very helpful. I don't actually have it here, but these are sort of illustrations that are similar to some of those that you see in the book that help the kids to understand Kachevniki, Kachevaya and then introducing the different types of ornamenты and talking about why it is with this Kachevaya on the steppe in Central Asia, why these different animals, and then the symbols, and where then we teach this class in the yurt, and the kids are then able to look at all of the textiles that I brought back from Kazakhstan and identify these symbols in those textiles. So all the different things that the students, and then between each one, they're finding different things and different parts of the yurt. And then afterwards, we make our own, use the ornamenты to make our own textiles. Last summer, this was a short activity with young kids, and so we just used paint pens and permanent markers, but in the future, we'll probably adapt it to be something where we can make more serious projects with embroidery or applique or that sort of thing. But you can see that the kids were very focused and had a great time making their projects. The next thing I want to talk about is our individual trip to the Musée Skust, where we saw lots of wonderful, wonderful artwork. And we were working on diversifying our Novice 3 curriculum, which has a unit around identity. And so we decided to link this curriculum to the art from the museum. So you can see we introduce the museum. They describe people based on some of the sculptures and paintings. And then some of the paintings include these elements of instruments and animals, geography, dwellings, and food. So introducing some key vocabulary related to those things so that they can then describe those. And this is our first unit in our Novice 3 curriculum. So we're sort of reviewing all of the concepts that they should have covered in Novice 1 and Novice 2 through the means of this content from the Museumskunst in Almaty. And then just to finish, going back to our visit to Ethno Aul, we had a chance to learn Karajorga, and dance is a big part of what we do at Lisnoye Ozera. So I was really excited that we got a little mini dance lesson. And one of my colleagues filmed me. I am clearly very much not a dancer. But I was then able to say, well, clearly this is a dance we need to teach at Lisnoye Ozera. And I have a video here of a Kazakh staff member then teaching it at the village to our kids. But last summer we had a very skeleton crew for our last week, and I was one of 4 people that was left, and we did not have a Kazakh teacher or a dance teacher that week. So I got to teach the Karajorga and make sure that that content remained in our experience of being able to learn it myself. So I think one of the things to keep in mind is just, I had an idea that I wanted to bring back some fun. I wanted to bring back some sensory bits, some engaging things, and I didn't know what that might look like. But just having your eyes open to all of the cultural things that you encounter and the places that exist in your curriculum for making things more exciting can help you to identify those things. And certainly knowing while you're there so you can bring back physical objects is great, but there are so many opportunities. I knew I wanted to do something with the art museum. I did bring back posters of art that we have up, but everything in that curriculum is from the internet. So just being able to see the things and have an idea, oh, this is something I want to hold on to later and work with can be enough. So I also would like very much to thank American Councils for this opportunity. It was absolutely enriching and wonderful, and has, impacted my staff and the kids at the camp, and also my university classes. So I think it's just been a wonderful endeavor that will affect many more people than just the teachers who get to go. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It sounds like you have some very exciting opportunities for students at Lisnoye Ozera that are enhanced by your time in Kazakhstan. Thank you to all of the presenters. That was really wonderful, reliving these experiences and seeing different angles that people chose to focus on. I'd like to open up the floor to questions. I believe we actually have some people who will be heading over this summer and other people who may be interested in applying in the future. I'll put a link in the chat to the program so you can find out more about it if you'd like. Are there any questions for our speakers, or actually for Dan too, who's one of the people who set up the program?
I just wanted to point out my pillow that always sits behind me that I got in Kazakhstan, and I was looking at Lara's ornamenty and just saw it right behind my head.
I was gonna ask about the pillow. I'm in a hotel room right now, but if I were in my real office, I would also have my ornamenti that I got from the bazaar.
Lara, what is it that got lost? Was it the stuff from Argirim?
Yeah, it was one of her boxes. So I have one of the karpieszki and like half of the clothes. And um, some of the games didn't make it. That was a bummer. Um, yeah, and my host sent me with two karpieszki, two of the giant long pillows, one for each of my children, and only one of them made it home. So now the two of them have to fight over it.
Annalise.
First of all, I just want to thank everyone for sharing their experiences. This has made me very excited. I am headed there this summer. So very much reviving my excitement about this at the end of my own semester. I wondered if you could collectively talk a little bit about the cohort experience and how it was to be with a cohort of other instructors from across different disciplines or different contexts, I guess. And what you might suggest for those of us who are headed to that experience to really develop some good relationships with our cohort as well.
I would say I was by far the youngest person on our program, and two words I would use to describe the cohort experience was supportive and gracious. Everyone was so supportive of each other, so patient with each other. It was nice that we were all on the same team, so we all worked together to get better at our Russian, have fun together in Kazakhstan and Almaty. So those are the two words I would use to describe. And because we were all so supportive of each other, we've kept up uh, this whole academic year. And I'm sure the 2023 summer has the same situation. Since y'all seem so very friendly with each other, I'd love to see it.
I
Any
was
other
not the
response?
youngest, but I found to add onto what Mattie was saying that we're all very generous sharing with each other what we did over the weekend. So some people we had a WhatsApp chat, and then some people were inviting each other to restaurant, to bars, and maybe even to work out, ride horses, and so on. And as Mattie said, I'm still in touch with many of them because this is a small field, and yeah. Our cohort was very diverse, ranging from teachers in high school all the way to college professors. So I really appreciated that contact.
Yeah, I'll echo what's been said so far. Incredibly supportive, and just really delightful to have people from so many different backgrounds, and really interesting to be able to share different perspectives and how this experience was impacting all of us differently. And I think for me, I was coming in, although I've run the language villages for 20 years, my career has been outside of Russian teaching aside from that. And so coming into the field relatively new, getting to meet colleagues and build relationships was incredible. And just having people built in to walk around and do stuff with. Shannon and I explored the city together, and I don't know about Shannon, but for me, it was really helpful to have someone saying, "Hey, let's go do this thing," and to know that if I wanted to go do that thing, I would have someone I could do it with. And I think that's super valuable. Exploring places on your own can be cool too, but to have built-in people who want to go out and do amazing stuff with you is just invaluable.
I would say one aspect of it that I didn't expect was learning about different aspects of the field that I didn't know about before. Personally, I was a little bit intimidated by AR before going, but thanks to my conversations with Kit, I'm going all out with using AI in projects. And I think my students are sort of amazed how much I'm using AI and teaching them what I call AI skepticism. So learning how to navigate using AI in viable ways and ethical ways. And that's something that I got not from the program itself, but from a participant, specifically Kit. And I think that this getting to know colleagues, having a whole month with colleagues is a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, and I think that the diversity of people with different interests also helps because, so for example, some of the people took time to go like to the Chadin Canyon, and that kind of thing didn't seem to be my cup of tea, and I was more interested in exploring the city and taking pictures of signs and things like and menus and things like that. Um, but I think the fact that they did that might inspire me to try something like that in the future. Um, or I know Tony's very friendly and he goes up and talks to everyone and he always he's so adventurous. And so some of the things that he did early in the program, even though I was slower to do them, I would well, Tony did this, so I can do it too.
Any other questions or comments? Anna was one of the participants in our program. Would you like to say a few words, Anna?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I was fortunate enough to travel last summer. And my recommendation for people who are going probably this summer and participating in this program, I would say the very first day when you have your orientation seminar in Washington, D.C., look around, jot down who the people are. People will do self-introduction, obviously, where they work, what they teach, etc. Try to find kind of your buddies right away. Introduce yourself to as many people as you can. Remember their names. Be friendly, be helpful to others. Please be mindful that some people might be shy. And yes, you will spend a lot of time with your host family and they will show you around and they will be wonderful introducing the city and local cuisine and history, everything to you. But also try to make friends with your colleagues, people who travel together with you in the same boat with you. Because during the school year, for example, I'm the only Russian language teacher, not only in my school, but also in my district. And there is only two in my state. So you don't get the benefit of collaborating and learning from each other, bouncing ideas of each other. So please, please, please use it to your advantage, not only the wonderful professors at Kaznu and your host family, but also your colleagues, other teachers on the program. That's a wonderful, wonderful resource. And I can only echo what you already said, how you learn from each other. Things that I learned from Susan and Kit, they were just wonderful.
I also just wanted to mention that one really big advantage of going to Kazakhstan is to have kind of not only cultural guides from your tutors, but also linguistic. So as far as like sometimes if you're trying to look up something, it really helps to be able to know how to spell it in Kazakh, for example. And so being able to ask people, you know, uh, how do you spell that in Kazakh in order to be able to find more resources? And so one maybe recommendation would be, and I tried to do this before I went and it helped a little bit, but I probably could have done it better, would be to do a little bit more of preparation as far as like the Kazakh alphabet, maybe some simple Kazakh words and phrases so that you would be more sensitive. I mean, it was really fun going around the city and sort of by osmosis learning words like Dari Hanna, right, is everywhere. You learn what a few words mean by just looking around. But I think that it would have helped me to do a little more of that preparation before I went. So you might consider that.
I'd echo that. I wish I'd read about Kazakh history, more about basic Kazakhstan, well, history and culture, and had a little bit more awareness before I went.
I'll echo everything that has been said, and to add that I actually thought out opportunity to learn Kazakh in a more official manner, but after some investigation, it was said that yeah, it was just too difficult logistically. So I end up just doing it with my host family. But very interesting thing is that the son, teenage. Um, did not know some words in Kazakh, so I end up having to ask the mother quite a bit. So I end up just learning the very basics, like good morning, how are you, things like that. But I wish that I had a little bit more exposure to the Kazakh language as well.
And I found that it goes a long way, even trying, not always successfully, saying things like "Приятного аппетита" in Kazakh, or asking people to help to write it down for me so that I could try. Even though you don't have to, other than "Rahmet" for thank you, it just makes it creates a sense of not just using Kazakhstan as a way to learn Russian.
Yeah, I have a
I
really
agree. Oh, no,
fond
go ahead, Kit.
of, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I have a fond memories of being, I think, in the back of a taxi with Susan, looking at the little notes she had taken, going to a dinner where we knew I think we were gonna have to give some toasts and trying to memorize some of the phrases in Kazakh, which were received so well. Yeah, if you're able to bring in some slightly beyond just rahmet, some more Kazakh words, that goes over so well, which is understandable. So I'll just say I also agree that if I could change one thing about my experience, it would be familiarizing myself a little bit with the Kazakh alphabet, some phrases ahead of time, and also more with Kazakh history, just to give me the context going in. You pick up a lot of it. There's a lot of opportunities to learn, but I think I wish I had done a little bit more preparation ahead of time, again, so that it doesn't feel just like we're using it as an opportunity to learn Russian, but that we're really, going in with an appreciation for this place that we're at that is also totally distinct.
And I appreciated that the curriculum in the language classes actually was very focused on Kazakh history and culture. I wish I had come in with more of it, but I felt like even without having come in with that, I got quite a lot from the classes. It would be nice to have some of the language, but I felt like the cultural and history elements in combination with the excursions really covered a lot of ground and inspired me to keep learning afterwards.
I just put a link in the chat to an article that 6 of us from the program last summer co-authored about our experiences in case you want more information. Any questions from other people heading over this summer or anyone else?
I just have a comment. I will say what's really striking me is just kind of like the love in your eyes and in your voice as you talk about this. It was so helpful for me as a teacher of Russian just to see applications to the classroom. And so I think we should do this kind of roundtable annually before the professional development opportunity comes around, because I think just hearing from teachers of how rich the experience was, you're tying it in to the experience that you had there and how you bring it into the classroom. I'm on another panel that's talking about addressing gaps in study abroad later today. And one of the big issues is that instructors don't know, and they might learn about it, but they don't have that like personal connection and bringing it into the classroom. And then we're having students not want to go abroad. And I take a group to Kyrgyzstan, and I will say that was eye-opening to me. And so it's kind of like until you've done it, you can't imagine it. And you did a really good job of helping me feel re-excited and imagine it. And I just think we need more people to go. And I having had a similar, I wish I had had a cohort experience of adults as well to talk through this rather than being the sole leader of a group of kids. Because you're saying the exact same thing that my students who come back and visit me, who have gone abroad or come back from Nestle Y or my college alums who have gone on things, they often talk about that cohort experience. And I remember back myself to going to Krasnodar in 1989, and I'm still in touch in a Facebook group with those alumni. And often, I think a lot of my students have said, and I feel too, that those were almost my best friends from college because we were so committed to the same kind of idea. And so it's really cool for me to see that in all of you as adults. Because to echo what somebody said, many of us are in our rooms all by ourselves and the sole person in our program. And so these networks, I think, are amazing.
It
Thank
was so
you.
much fun to feel like I was on study abroad again. It was great.
I just reposted a link to the newsletter itself. It's the summer and fall issue of 2024. Could I ask Dan to say a few words about the history of the program and how you envisioned it?
That's very kind, Susan. I didn't mean to be sitting here waiting to have the floor at all. I was here totally all ears, and there's no greater validation for the work of the SRLT than what you all just said. This panel is marvelous. It's magic, and it shows the range of impact that SRLT can have. Just thank you for your comments. We circulate these surveys, as you all know, and thank you for filling them out. It always seemed to me that people who've just returned from the program are able to comment in a very special and personal way about its impact on you particularly, and how it may have changed your view rather fundamentally maybe of this place and even of the work that you do. And then we question you about 6 months later to comment on more curricular impact, how your teaching and approach to instruction may have changed. I know in my own case, having done the program so many years ago, I could not walk into the classroom again and say the things I used to say after this experience. It was that powerful, and we want this to be available. Other opportunities perhaps as well. I had my ears open for suggestions, things that work well for you, things that I sense there's a difference on travel. The overnight travel was missing in Tony's program, but present in Kit's program. Tony missed it, and Kit was fine without it. So we don't always align everything the right way. So again, any feedback you can share, lasting kind of impressions, things you would have changed, even one or two things that might have made a difference in your view. This is a point where you can have very powerful influence on what we do this coming summer. The program is funded, unfortunately, year to year, so it keeps some of us busy working with funders. But to me, it's probably the most important thing one could do. If I only had one role in the profession, it would be, I think, to try to keep this program funded. Think of all the crazy things we spend our time doing. So I just say thank you all. Susan, a million thanks for organizing this panel, for getting up at 5 a.m. To run it, and also for that excellent spread of articles that you all ran in the December issue of ACTR newsletters. And I have shown that to the funders, to Kazakhstan, to the faculty, everybody I know. I've made them look at it. So I think we're all on the same boat on this. I think there's no disagreement that we need this, and we need to use you on it too. Let's just hope to keep the program running. Again, any advice you have for us, you will be heard, I assure you. Thanks a lot, Susan.
Mm-hmm. Well, infinite thanks to you and to Maria Lekic for setting this up and for being so engaged in it and open to change over all these years. We actually can stay a little bit more if you'd like to. Or you can take a break, whatever you'd prefer. Apparently the breakout rooms will remain open for a little bit more. Thank you all for coming. Wonderful to have so many people here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. This has been so nice. The SRLT program last summer was just one of the best experiences that I've had in years, like professional, like of any professional experience. And it's so nice to have this opportunity to see friends from the program and to, again, relive those experiences. So thank you. And yeah, thank you, Susan.
Especially the potato chips, right?
Especially the potato chips, yeah. Which I even managed to bring a couple of packs back. They were a little squashed, but I brought them back in my suitcase and had a lot of fun giving them to people to try.
I didn't bring potato chips, but I did bring Kazma soup chick, which students thought were kind of interesting with, interplanetary pasta.
So great to see you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you, Anna.
I had
Did
hoped that
anyone from the
some of the instructors might be here so that we could pay them tribute, but I know we all had wonderful experiences with our instructors. Yeah. Actually, Tatiana Piniana will be one of the speakers. Not to shamelessly plug my own panel, but if you want to hear her contributions at, I believe it's 11:15. Maybe that's 5:1, something like that. And also Sandikash is going to be presenting at that. Sandikash Panzabayeva. I can actually pronounce that name, having spent a month trying to pronounce it in Kazakhstan.
Mattie, when you were talking, I think you said that your cohort, everyone elected to stay in host families. Was it a choice for the 2024 group?
It was.
No.
We
Okay.
could, we had the option to stay in a dorm, and they even on our first day brought us over and they go, "Oh, if you picked to stay in the dorm, here's where you'd be," but nobody picked it, so here it is.
I think the homestay was a highlight for everybody, from what I understood. As I feel like everyone felt like they were the luckiest person on the program to be with their specific match.
That's
I
really
felt
great.
I felt that that was so wonderful that they matched us up so well. Apparently, my host said, "Give me the youngest one. I want the youngest one." And then I asked for her iron and ironing board, so I hope she enjoyed the youngest one.
She has confidence in the youth of the future.
I
At
was
least
in
there's
a
some people who iron.
Yeah. I was in a host family with a 15-year-old boy who taught me lots of Gen Z slang in Russian and also English because he, online. So he taught me lots of English slang that I've since heard my students use. So that was an unexpected learning opportunity to come back and understand some of what my students are saying in English.
Did anyone
Our,
try the shashlik Lay's potato chips? Those were my personal favorite over the bishbarmak. I think I have a picture of them somewhere, and if I had slides, I would have put them in.
our
I
keynote
think I have
speaker
those.
actually is the professor and научный руководитель, I believe, of many of our instructors on the program. And that will start at on my clock it's 6:45. It's 6:45 p.m. in Kazakhstan, and I believe 9:45 is the starting time for people on the East Coast. Thank you very much to all of you for enthusiastically joining this panel and each person contributing a different angle to this phenomenal experience that we all had.
Thanks, Susan. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. This was so much fun.
You're very welcome.